At 11:23 local time, something happened in the Red Sea that no headline fully explained. A third US supercarrier took its position, not rotating in, not replacing another ship, joining it. And for the first time in over 2 decades, 3 American carrier strike groups were operating in the same theater, not as presence, but as pressure. What that actually means is not what most people think, because the real story isn't the 3 carriers you can see on the map. It's the 4th one you don't. At 11:23 local time in the northern Red Sea, approximately 180 nautical miles northwest of the Bab el-Mandeb, USS George H.W. Bush completed her transit from Naval Station Norfolk around the Cape of Good Hope and into theater, and took position alongside USS Gerald R. Ford. In the Arabian Sea, 280 nautical miles southeast of the Strait of Hormuz, USS Abraham Lincoln held station. 3 nuclear-powered supercarriers, 3 independent carrier strike groups, 3 separate Aegis destroyer screens covering every approach corridor into and out of the Persian Gulf simultaneously. 240 fixed-wing aircraft, 12 surface combatants, 15,000 sailors and Marines. The last time the United States maintained 3 carriers in CENTCOM's area of responsibility at the same time was the opening of Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003. This analysis draws on publicly available military reporting, satellite tracking data, and defense briefings. The 3-carrier posture was made public on April 24th through an official release. A single graphic showing Lincoln, Ford, and Bush positioned across the region. Iran's leadership is looking at that wall right now, and the wall is holding. But here's the question. Every naval analyst, every IRGCN planner, and every official sitting at the table in Islamabad is running in parallel. What happens if 3 is not enough? What happens if the ceasefire collapses? What happens if the IRGCN launches a coordinated operational surge? Fast attack swarms from Bandar Abbas, mine-laying operations under commercial cover, simultaneous Shahed drone saturation targeting the Aegis radar horizon, nor anti-ship missiles engaging the escort destroyers at maximum range. All at once, before the diplomatic track has produced anything that binds either side. What happens when Washington concludes that the triangle needs a 4th point? The answer is sitting at Naval Station Norfolk, Virginia. Because 3 carriers is not the end state, it's the visible layer. The real question, the one planners in Washington and Tehran are both running in parallel, is what happens when 3 stops being enough. Because the United States Navy does not build 3-carrier pressure scenarios. It builds escalation ladders, and the next step on that ladder already exists. USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, CVN-69, a Nimitz-class nuclear-powered carrier, is currently in her post-deployment maintenance and workup cycle, following one of the longest and most operationally demanding carrier deployments in recent U.S. Navy history. From 2023 into 2024, Eisenhower spent approximately 9 months in the Red Sea and Arabian Sea, running combat operations against Houthi drone swarms and anti-ship missiles in the exact confined water threat environment that now defines the Strait of Hormuz campaign. Her crew has already fought this war. They know this geography. They know how Iran's proxies fight, how the drones come in low and slow below radar coverage, how the fast boats use commercial traffic as radar shadows, how shore-based missiles try to suppress air cover before the surface threat closes. What makes Eisenhower different is not the ship, it's the crew. That kind of experience does not rotate evenly across the fleet, and right now, it's sitting in Norfolk. Eisenhower is the 4th carrier Washington is holding in reserve, and what she represents, what adding her to the Lincoln-Ford-Bush triangle would actually change, is the story that the 3-carrier graphic does not show you. To understand the weight of that 4th carrier, you first have to understand what the current 3-carrier structure actually produces and where its limits are. Lincoln's position in the Arabian Sea provides coverage of the eastern Strait of Hormuz approach. Her air wing, carrying F-35C Lightning II 5th-generation stealth fighters alongside F/A, 18E/F Super Hornets, and EA-18G Growler electronic attack aircraft, holds the primary enforcement corridor for the naval blockade. FAMA-35Cs, operating at low radar cross-section, can reach targets along the Iranian coastline and over Bandar Abbas without the kind of electronic emissions that would alert shore-based air defense systems before weapon release. For the fast attack craft threat and the remaining coastal missile batteries, Lincoln's Air Wing is the first and most persistent response option. Ford's position in the Red Sea, alongside Bush, covers the Bab el-Mandeb, the 16 nautical mile corridor between Yemen and Djibouti, through which any vessel attempting to route around Hormuz via the Suez Canal must transit. Ford is the most advanced carrier ever commissioned. The electromagnetic aircraft launch system, replacing the steam catapults that powered carrier aviation for 6 decades, increasing sortie generation rates, and reducing mechanical maintenance cycles. Ford's Air Wing is Super Hornet heavy, with EA-18G Growlers, providing the electronic attack coverage that suppresses Iranian shore-based radar systems before strike packages enter the coastal threat envelope. Bush completes the Red Sea presence alongside Ford, her Super Hornet dominant air wing adding strike depth and combat. Air patrol endurance to the western coverage area, her 2-seat FA-18F strike variants, with a weapons systems officer in the back seat managing the targeting pod while the pilot flies. Provide the precision, low-altitude maritime interdiction capability that the blockade enforcement mission demands. 3 carriers, 3 coverage sectors, 0 gaps in the geometric triangle that surrounds every viable exit route for Iranian oil exports. The escorts that hold each strike group's defensive perimeter are what make this architecture operationally coherent rather than simply impressive on a map. Each carrier operates with Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers, maintaining an outer screen extending 50 nautical miles from the carrier's position. Each destroyer's SPY-1D phased array radar system sweeps 360 degrees continuously, integrated through the Naval Integrated Fire Control Network into a shared operational picture that allows a contact detected by one platform to generate a firing solution on another. The SM-6 interceptor, maximum engagement range exceeding 130 nautical miles, can neutralize an incoming anti-ship cruise missile before that missile's own terminal radar seeker has activated. The threat is addressed before it has seen its target. USS Leyte Gulf, CG-55, a Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruiser assigned to Eisenhower's strike group during her 2023 to 2024 deployment, and available for the same role in any future deployment, serves as the air defense coordinator, managing intercept architecture against ballistic and cruise missile threats at ranges and altitudes that exceed the individual destroyer's independent engagement envelopes. Below the surface, Los Angeles-class and Virginia-class fast attack submarines maintain position within each formation's subsurface screen, providing anti-submarine warfare coverage in the acoustically complex, shallow waters of the Gulf of Oman, where Iran's Ghadir-class midget submarines operate. Now look at what a 4th carrier strike group adds to this structure. Because the answer is not simply more aircraft, it is the elimination of the one structural vulnerability the current triangle contains. 3 carrier strike groups covering 3 geographic sectors means that each strike group's coverage is maximized when it holds its assigned sector and minimized when it is forced to respond to a threat in an adjacent sector. If the IRGCN generates a simultaneous multi-sector engagement, fast boats in the strait while coastal missiles engage the Lincoln screen, while a mine-laying operation exploits the coverage gap during the Lincoln strike group's response. The current 3-carrier geometry has to make prioritization decisions. Something gets less coverage while something else gets more. A 4th carrier in the Central Arabian Sea, positioned to cover the gap between Lincoln's eastern Hormuz sector and the Red Sea coverage provided by Ford and Bush, eliminates that prioritization problem. There is no engagement in one sector that creates a coverage deficit in another. Every threat vector is covered by a strike group that does not have to divert from its primary sector to address it. The geometry becomes self-reinforcing rather than trade-off dependent. That is what Eisenhower's deployment would change, not the raw capability. The 3 carriers already represent more air power than most nations possess in total. What changes is the architectural resilience. The elimination of the scenario where a coordinated IRGCN surge forces a coverage gap that the current triangle cannot close without rebalancing. Iran's remaining asymmetric threat layer is real, documented, and specifically calibrated for exactly this vulnerability. The IRGCN fast attack craft fleet, Thondor-class and Paycap-class vessels at 40 to 60 knots, pre-positioned in hardened underground facilities around Bandar Abbas, Keshm Island, and Larak Island, is designed for simultaneous multi-axis swarm attacks. not to defeat an Aegis destroyer in a symmetric engagement, but to overload its defensive engagement sequencing by presenting more simultaneous inbound contacts than a single fire control system can prioritize and address before at least one closes to weapons range. Available reporting and independent analysis indicate significant attrition across Iran's naval assets over the course of sustained operations, particularly among larger surface combatants and support vessels. But the core of Iran's asymmetric capability, its fast attack craft fleet, remains operational. The mine threat is documented. U.S. military reporting has confirmed the detection and neutralization of Iranian pattern influence mines in the Hormuz approach shipping lane. USS Pioneer and USS Gladiator, Avenger-class mine countermeasures ships forward deployed at Naval Support Activity Bahrain, are conducting continuous sweep operations in the transit corridor. But mine laying from civilian vessels operating under commercial cover is an activity that cannot be eliminated by airstrikes alone. The forward presence of surface combatants capable of interdicting mine-laying vessels before they reach the transit lane is the operational answer. And that presence requires enough strike group coverage that the interdiction screen does not create gaps elsewhere. Noor and Qadr anti-ship cruise missiles, shore-based with engagement ranges of 120 to 170 kilometers, remain sighted along the northern Hormuz coastline in mobile launcher configurations using shoot and relocate doctrine. Shahed series loitering munitions can be launched from coastal positions and provide low-altitude saturation coverage that challenges Aegis radar detection at the ranges where defensive engagement time is tightest. Eisenhower's 2023 to 2024 deployment ran against all of these threat categories in the Red Sea operational environment. Her crew did not train against Houthi drone swarms in simulation. They intercepted them operationally, developing these specific engagement sequences, the radar discrimination techniques for slow, low-altitude contacts in thermally complex maritime environments, the coordination protocols between surface combatants and combat air patrol aircraft that allow the formation to address multiple simultaneous threat vectors without creating defensive gaps. That operational knowledge is the specific capability that no other carrier in the current fleet rotation brings to this theater at this moment. Lincoln, Ford, and Bush are each carrying experienced crews. None of them have run against this specific threat combination in this specific geography as recently as Eisenhower's crew has. And the decision to use it would not be gradual. The trigger conditions that would convert Eisenhower from a Norfolk maintenance cycle to a deployment order are not publicly specified, but the operational logic identifies them clearly: a collapse of the Islamabad ceasefire framework. Specifically, a breakdown in which Iranian officials publicly abandon the negotiating track rather than simply delaying it, removes the political constraint that currently limits escalation options. A coordinated IRGCN operational surge that successfully exploits a coverage gap in the three-carrier triangle and produces a significant maritime incident changes the military calculus directly. A mine detonation against a US Navy vessel or a confirmed escort in the Hormuz transit lane crosses a threshold that the current ROE framework treats as a triggering event for expanded response. Any one of those conditions, occurring in a window where the ceasefire diplomacy is clearly stalled, generates the deployment order. The IRGCN knows this. Every Iranian official in Islamabad knows this. The $500 million per day in confirmed lost oil export revenue is the arithmetic they carry into every session. The three-carrier triangle is the geographic reality they cannot maneuver around. And the knowledge that a fourth carrier, the most combat-experienced crew in the Navy for exactly this threat environment, is available and ready at Norfolk is the escalation signal Washington does not need to announce. Eisenhower's new mission is not yet the Strait of Hormuz. It is readiness. And readiness held in reserve when the adversary knows exactly what it represents is its own form of deterrence. The talks in Islamabad will determine whether that readiness becomes a deployment order. The IRGCN knows this. Every Iranian official in Islamabad knows this. The $500 million per day in confirmed lost oil export revenue is the arithmetic they carry into every session. The three-carrier triangle is the geographic reality they cannot maneuver around. And the knowledge that a fourth carrier, the most combat-experienced crew in the Navy for exactly this threat environment, is available and ready at Norfolk is the escalation signal Washington does not need to announce. Eisenhower's new mission is not yet the Strait of Hormuz. It is readiness, and readiness held in reserve when the adversary knows exactly what it represents, is its own form of deterrence. The talks in Islamabad will determine whether that readiness becomes a deployment order. But if they produce nothing, if the ceasefire collapses and the IRGCN makes its move, the fourth point of the triangle is already crewed, already armed, and already knows this war. 3 carriers are already in position. The fourth isn't deployed, but it doesn't need to be. Because in this kind of standoff, what matters isn't just what's on the map, it's what can arrive next. And right now, both sides know exactly what that is. If you found this analysis valuable, like the video, subscribe channel for more updates, and watch another video now. Thanks for watching. See you in the next update.